What if the woman who arrived to save his home was nothing like the one he ordered, and everything he truly needed? The hot Texas wind scraped across Redwater Crossing like a rough hand, carrying dust, the smell of horses, and a warning that change was coming. Noah Carver stood alone beside the weathered hitching post outside the sheriff's office, the telegram clutched tight in his hand. The small paper shook, though the wind wasn't the only reason. For almost a year, the ranch had been falling apart around him. The roof leaked. The cattle herd shrank through sickness and bad luck. And Noah, once strong, loud, and full of life, had gone quiet after the accident that had taken his wife. Quiet and hollow. His daughter, little June, only 7, had grown quieter too. He wasn't looking for romance. He wasn't even sure he believed in it anymore. He just needed help. A partner in the work. A presence in the home, someone steady, someone who wouldn't break. So when he'd written to the frontier shelter in Dallas, send a woman willing to work, steady in temperament, fond of children, he hadn't cared about anything else. Yet the reply made his heart edge into a tight corner. Bride arriving on the 3 o'clock stage. No name provided. That was it. No description, no warning, just that she was coming. He folded the telegram, slid it into his coat, and mounted the wagon for the long ride to the crossroads where the stage stopped. Redwater Crossing faded behind him. A single dusty street, a leaning church steeple, a saloon with half its sign missing. The wide land stretched ahead, golden and empty. Noah was used to empty. As he rolled to a stop at the crossroads, the silence felt huge. Only the creak of wagon wood and the distant cry of a hawk broke the stillness. If this woman didn't show, or if she wasn't right for the ranch, he didn't know what he'd do. June needed stability, the ranch needed labor, and Noah, he needed something he hadn't said out loud in a long time. Help. He waited as the sun dropped lower, bleeding orange across the dry horizon. Dust shimmered in the heat. Sweat rolled beneath the band of his hat. He checked his pocket watch. 3:20. Then 3:40. Finally, distant, faint at first, came the rumble of wheels, the snorting of tired horses. A cloud of dust rose from the far road as the stagecoach rattled closer, its paint chipped, its wheels wobbling under the long journey. The horses pulled to a stop with a hard snort. The driver swung down, wiping his forehead with a dirty sleeve. "Got one for you, Carver," he shouted. "You're the fellow who wrote the shelter, right?" Noah nodded, his stomach tightening. The driver yanked open the coach door. A traveling salesman climbed down first, red-faced and gasping. A young couple followed, holding a crying baby. Then, last of all, a woman appeared at the top step. Noah's breath lodged in his throat. She was not young, not soft-faced, not polished like the women who posed in marriage ads. She looked around 30, maybe a little more. Her dress was plain gray, patched carefully at the sleeves and hem. A thin shawl wrapped around her shoulders despite the heat. Her boots were scuffed. Her brown hair was braided tight against her head like she'd done it quickly, without vanity. Her face carried the story she didn't speak. A brown birthmark, large and dark, covered her right cheek and jawline, an unmistakable mark that would have made most townsfolk stare and judge. She held a small, worn satchel in one hand and nothing else. She stepped down from the coach, gripping the rail as if steadying herself for battle. Her eyes, soft green, tired, alert, lifted to Noah. "You're Mr. Carver," she said quietly, her voice low and husky. "My name is Ruth, Ruth Adler. I'm the bride they sent." The driver tossed her satchel to the ground and slapped the horses' reins. The stagecoach pulled away in a storm of dust, leaving them standing alone in the hot wind. Noah cleared his throat. "I thought they'd send someone younger," he said before he could stop himself. Regret hit him instantly. Ruth didn't flinch. She just nodded once. "I'm not the pretty one you ordered," she said, her voice steady. "I know that. I wasn't their first choice." "Or second," she paused, tightening her shawl. "If you want to send me back, I understand." She wasn't begging. She wasn't pleading. She was bracing. Noah looked at her, the patched dress, the birthmark. the way her hands shook only when she thought he wasn't looking. Anyone else might have seen a woman who had been overlooked too many times, but he saw something else entirely. Strength, courage, survival. He stepped forward, picked up her satchel, and placed it gently in the wagon. "Ruth," he said, "this ranch doesn't need pretty." She blinked, startled. "It needs steady hands, a strong back, and someone who won't quit when the land gets mean." He held her gaze. "You're all I need." A long breath escaped her. She climbed up onto the wagon beside him. For the entire ride back, she sat straight and silent, her eyes fixed on the wide Texas land. Noah didn't speak either, but he could feel something shifting. Not romance, not yet. Something older, simpler, hope. And neither of them noticed the lone rider far off on the ridge, watching them both, the sun glinting off a gun strapped across his saddle. The dusty road to the Carver ranch stretched quiet and lonely beneath the blazing sky. Ruth sat stiff-backed on the wagon bench, her hands folded tight in her lap, the wind tugging at loose strands of her braided hair. She didn't look at Noah. She stared straight ahead, as if meeting his eyes might break something inside her she had fought too hard to hold together. Noah kept the reins steady, but his jaw worked with unspoken thoughts. He wasn't a man who talked much, not since the accident that had taken his wife, but he felt the weight of Ruth's silence. It was the kind that came from wounds carried too long. As the ranch house came into view, a modest cabin, its wood aged by sun and storms, Ruth's breath caught. She had never seen a place so open. No neighbors, no fences beyond the cattle fields, nothing but wind, sky, and raw land. "You'll get used to it," Noah said, noticing her unease. Ruth nodded once. "It's quiet." Quote, "It's been too quiet for too long." She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't need to. The wagon rolled to a stop. The front door opened, and a small girl with long brown braids and big gray eyes stepped out. June. She stopped halfway down the porch steps, gripping the railing with both hands. "Pa," Noah cleared his throat. "June, this is Miss Ruth. She's going to help us on the ranch." Ruth forced a gentle smile. "Hello, June." The girl stared, but not at Ruth's clothes or her satchel. She stared at the birthmark along Ruth's cheek. Noah stiffened, waiting for his daughter's reaction. June didn't say anything cruel. She didn't even look frightened. She just stepped back behind the porch post, shy and uncertain. Ruth swallowed. "I won't trouble her," she murmured. "You won't," Noah said firmly. "She just needs time." Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and coffee grounds. It was clean but lonely. There were only 2 chairs at the table, only 1 mug on the shelf, only the bare minimum of dishes and blankets and warmth. Ruth recognized the signs of grief instantly. She had lived among them all her life. "Your room is back there," Noah said, motioning to a narrow door near the hearth. "Small, but it's yours." She stepped inside. The room was barely big enough for a cot and a washstand. But it was clean, it was private, it was hers. She set her satchel on the bed, her hand brushing the worn fabric. Then she heard a soft sound behind her. June stood in the doorway, half hidden. Ruth turned slowly. "Do you want to see my room?" June asked in a whisper. Ruth blinked in surprise. "If you'd like to show me." June nodded hard and stepped back, motioning her to follow. Noah watched from the kitchen doorway as the 2 disappeared down the hall. Something small and fragile inside him eased. Not hope exactly, but the beginning of it. He stepped outside, letting the screen door shut behind him. The ranch felt different, even with just 1 more person breathing on it. He looked out across the land, the fields, the barn, the cattle pens, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel quite so alone. But then he saw it, a distant figure on horseback standing still at the ridge, watching the cabin. Noah narrowed his eyes. The rider turned and disappeared behind the rocky rise. A chill slid through him, subtle but sharp. When he went back inside, Ruth was standing at the stove, sleeves rolled up, wiping dust from the cast iron skillet. June stood beside her, handing her a rag like a proud assistant. "I hope it's all right that I start on supper," Ruth said quietly. "More than all right," Noah replied. Her eyes flicked to him, uncertain, then back down to the stove. Supper was simple: biscuits, beans, and boiled potatoes. But it was the fullest meal the cabin had seen in weeks. Noah and June watched Ruth's hands move with practiced care, her motions efficient, her shoulders tense with a need to prove her worth. Halfway through the meal, June finally spoke. "Miss Ruth," she whispered, "does it hurt?" Ruth froze. Noah's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. June pointed gently to Ruth's cheek. "Your mark." Ruth lowered her hand from her cup. She touched the birthmark with a small, steady motion. "No," she said softly, "it doesn't hurt." June nodded. "It's part of you." Ruth's breath trembled. No one had ever said that to her, not in her childhood, not at the shelter, not anywhere. Noah saw her eyes drop to her lap, her fingers curling tight. He understood more than she realized. After supper, Ruth stood washing dishes while Noah stepped onto the porch again, the cool night air settling over the land. The stars glowed above like lanterns hung across a vast black ceiling. The quiet was deep, too deep. He heard a single horse in the distance, a slow, deliberate trot, moving along the ridge again, watching. Noah's hand went to the rifle propped beside the doorframe. Inside, unaware, Ruth dried the last plate and placed it on the shelf. June hugged her leg before heading to her small room. Ruth froze again, emotion tightening her throat. "Good night, Miss Ruth," June whispered. "Good night, June." Ruth stepped into the main room, pulled the small curtain over her window, and finally exhaled. She could breathe here. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sleeping in a crowded home or a loud shelter. She sank to the cot, pulling her knees to her chest. Maybe this place would be different. Maybe this man was different. But the world had never been kind to her for long. Outside, Noah lifted the rifle, watching the ridge with narrowed eyes. He didn't know who the rider was, but he knew one thing for certain. Whoever that man was, he hadn't come for cattle. He had come for Ruth. Dawn came pale and red, spreading across the Texas sky like a warning. The Carver ranch woke slow and quiet, but the uneasy stillness in the air felt heavier than the heat that would roll in by noon. Ruth stepped out of her small room, tying her apron, ready to grind coffee and start breakfast. She paused when she saw Noah sitting at the table, already dressed, boots on, hat low, his rifle resting against his leg. He hadn't slept. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Noah looked up at her, his eyes tired but alert. "There was someone riding the ridge last night," he said, "watching the ranch." Her breath hitched. "Watching us?" "Watching you, I reckon." Ruth pressed a hand to her chest. She didn't know anyone in Texas. She didn't know anyone here. No one from the shelter should have followed her. Unless... No. She forced the thought away. Noah stood up, taking a rifle with him. "If someone's sniffing around this ranch, I want to know why." He moved toward the door, but Ruth stepped in front of him. "I can't be the reason trouble comes to your home," she said, her voice tight. "If someone is here because of me..." "No," Noah said firmly. "We brought you here. You belong here now. Anyone who comes after you comes after all of us." Her lips parted, startled by the weight of those words. Before she could answer, the screen door squeaked open. "Pa?" June asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Noah softened in an instant. "Go sit with Miss Ruth, honey." "I'll be right outside." Ruth watched him step out into the cool morning, the rifle across his arm. She pressed her palm to the table to steady herself. No one had ever stood between her and danger. Not ever. The day unfolded on thin nerves. Ruth cleaned. June followed her. Noah scanned the horizon. Every shift of wind made him look up. Every creak of the barn set Ruth's stomach twisting. Before noon, Noah saddled his horse. "I'm going to check the north line," he said. "Just to be sure no one has been cutting through the fence." "I'm coming with you," Ruth replied. He shook his head. "No, stay close to the house. Lock the door if anything feels off." Her voice rose before she could stop it. "I won't sit here scared." Noah stepped closer, his eyes serious, steady. "Ruth, let me handle this." The way he said her name, low, warm, protective, froze her in place. She nodded, and he touched the brim of his hat and rode out toward the open range. Ruth stood on the porch watching him until he disappeared behind the far hill. June slipped her hand into hers. "You won't let anything bad happen, will you?" June whispered. Ruth knelt, brushing a braid back from the girl's cheek. "No, sweetheart. Not while I'm here." But her voice trembled. Noon heat rolled across the land. The sky bleached white. Ruth hung a sheet on the line when June tugged at her apron. "Miss Ruth," she whispered, "there's a man." Ruth's heart slammed. She turned. A lone rider approached the ranch, moving slow, purposeful, and wrong. Ruth's knees weakened. The man wasn't from the shelter. He wasn't a passing cowhand. She knew him. Not the face, but the type, the posture, the look in his eyes. Someone with claim in his mind. Someone from the life she had run from. Ruth grabbed June's hand. In the house. Now. They slipped inside. Ruth bolted the door. Her breath shook as she grabbed the small kitchen knife. Pitiful against a man with a gun, but all she had. The rider stopped in front of the porch. His voice came through the door. Smooth, oily, familiar in the worst way. "Miss Adler, I'm here to collect what's owed." Ruth's blood ran cold. "I don't owe you anything," she said through the wood. "Oh, but you do. You left debts behind. The kind that follow you no matter where you crawl." June whimpered behind her. "You leave this ranch," Ruth warned, her voice cracking. "You leave us alone." Quote. He chuckled softly. "Your cowboy ain't here, and folks like you don't get fresh starts. Now open this door nice and easy." A rifle cocked behind him. "Very close. Very cold," Ruth gasped. "Noah!" He had come back. The rider froze, hands tightening on his reins. "You move 1 inch," Noah said, voice flat as iron, "and I'll drop you where you sit." The rider slowly raised his hands. "Noah," Ruth whispered, pulling the curtain aside slightly. "Be careful." Noah didn't look at her. His eye stayed on the man. "You're trespassing," he said. "You're threatening a woman under my roof and my care. State your business and then get off my land." The rider smiled with yellowed teeth. "She ain't told you everything, has she? She ran out on a contract. She ran from the folks who took care of her. She owes money. She owes time. She is marked." Noah's jaw tightened. "She owes you nothing." "She owes me everything," the man snarled. "And if you keep her, you're gonna owe me too." Noah stepped closer, rifle raised. "You don't get to come here and scare my daughter. You don't get to dig up this woman's past like you own it. You turn your horse around, you ride out, and you never come back." The rider's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" Noah didn't blink. "Or you'll find out what happens when a man threatens my family." The word hit Ruth like a blow to the chest. Family. The rider hesitated, but only for a moment. The barrel of Noah's rifle didn't waver. He saw something in Noah's face that convinced him. He spat in the dirt, turned his horse, and rode off the way he'd come. Slow, but leaving. Noah didn't lower the rifle until the man was a speck, swallowed by the hills. Only then did Ruth unlock the door and rush onto the porch. "Noah!" Her voice broke. You shouldn't have faced him alone." He turned to her, the rifle still in his hand. "I'd face 10 of him," he said softly, "before I let anyone hurt you." Her breath caught. The world blurred for a moment, heat shimmering with something deeper than fear. "Noah," she whispered, stepping closer, "I didn't tell you everything. I was going to. I didn't want my past to touch June. Or you." Quote. He shook his head. "Your past is just that. Past." Ruth swallowed hard. "You don't know what that man meant. The place I came from, it wasn't kind. I wasn't wanted. I was sent to shelters, to workhouses, to people who only saw what was wrong with me. When I came here, I thought maybe I could be someone else." Noah's voice gentled. "You are someone else. You're Ruth. You belong here. With us." Her throat tightened. "You're not angry. I wasn't the woman you asked for?" He stepped closer. Close enough she could feel the heat of him, smell the dust and pine on his shirt. "I asked for someone steady," he said. "Someone strong. Someone who wouldn't quit." He touched the birthmark on her cheek, not with pity, but with a tender, grounding certainty. "And they sent me you." Ruth's breath shuddered. She lifted a hand, resting it against his chest. His heartbeat thumped under her palm, strong, sure, and steady. June peeked from the doorway, watching them with wide eyes. Ruth whispered, "Noah, I don't know how to be anything more than what I've been." Quote? He lifted her chin gently. "You just be here, that's enough." The wind caught her skirt. The porch creaked under their feet. The world seemed to hold still. Ruth leaned forward, her voice barely a breath. "I'm not the pretty one you ordered." Noah smiled then, a slow, deep smile that softened every hard edge in his face. "You're all I need." And he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't uncertain. It was the kind of kiss that told the truth without needing words. The kind that anchored two people to the same place. June giggled softly behind her hands. When they pulled apart, Ruth's forehead rested against his. The danger was not fully gone. The rider might return. Trouble might circle back through the hills. But Ruth wasn't running anymore. And Noah wasn't alone anymore. The Carver ranch finally felt like home. "Come on," Noah murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Let's go inside. Supper won't cook itself." Ruth smiled. Small, real, and full of a new kind of peace. She took Noah's hand. And for the first time in her life, she walked into a house that felt like hers.